Hi, this is Kivy LaRue Miller with nonprofitmarketingguide.com. Let's talk about editorial calendars. All editorial calendars need at least 3 elements. You need to know your communications channels. You need to know the messaging that's going out in those channels. And you need an understanding of the timing of when those messages are going out in all of those communications channels. Let's say that this is on your to-do list for the coming month. You need to get an email newsletter out every week, and each edition will have 3 articles in it. You need to get a direct mail appeal out at the beginning of the month. You're going to follow that up with 2 email appeals, and you try to post to Facebook and Twitter about twice a day. I found that most people either have spreadsheet brain or calendar brain. If you have spreadsheet brain, you like to look at things in charts. You like to have it all in front of you where you can see all of the data in one view. If you have calendar brain, you really prefer to see things organized in a much more chronological way. You may have calendar brain for some things and spreadsheet brain for others. Today, we're going to look at the 2 most basic tools for spreadsheet brain and calendar brain. We're going to look at Excel and we're going to look at Google Calendars. This is an example of what a most basic editorial calendar might look like in Excel. And you'll see we have the 3 different elements that we talked about. We've got our communications channels across the top. We've got a sense of time down the side. In this case, it's organized by week. And then in the middle is where we would put all of our content messaging. So we talked about having an e-newsletter that went out every week. So you can see we've got the spaces here to fill that in. And we talked about how each newsletter is going to have 3 elements. So that's what these little boxes are. And if you were working on this editorial calendar, you would actually fill in these boxes with the topic. So it might be the headline, or it might just be some kind of subject tickler to remind you about what's going to go in there. Similarly, we talked about doing a direct mail appeal, and that was going to go out in the first week. So we only have a direct mail appeal here in this first week, and we could include some information in this box about the subject of that appeal. We talked about following it up with 2 email appeals, and then we talked about using Facebook and Twitter both twice a day. So you've got 2 different slots here for each day of the week that you would need to fill in. This is the most basic view for Excel. You can add additional layers of information, like who's responsible for it, what stage the content is in, but this is a good starting point. Now let's take a look at what this might look like in Google Calendar. So you can see we've got our blank calendar here with just some holidays on it. And the way I would set this up is to create a different colored calendar for each communications channel. So if we turn on direct mail editorial, you see our ask popping up here, and you can see that it's on a specific day now. Email editorial, remember we're going to do both asks and newsletters. So I've included all of that on one calendar. You could separate those out if you wanted to, but you can see that we have our newsletter each Tuesday. And we now have our 2 follow-up asks scheduled as well. And then you could also do calendars for Facebook and Twitter. And we talked about doing those twice a day. So I have AM and PM there. A lot of people don't actually do full editorial calendars for social media, or they only do them on dates where they really need to remember. So let's say if you knew you absolutely wanted to follow up on your email ask that's going out in the morning with content that was going to be related, you might go ahead and fill these in, but some other days of the week you might leave them blank and just remember to go on there and repost something that is working or share content from another organization, but it doesn't have to be very tightly aligned with the message of the day per se. Let's go ahead and just turn off Facebook and Twitter to kind of get those out of the way for a minute here. So the thing I like about calendars is that I think it's much easier to see how you can repurpose content and how content is related. Let's go ahead and open up this email news item here. You can use the description in Google Calendar to lay out more of the detail about what was going to be in this newsletter. There are also a number of other elements that you can add to this. For example, Christina and I use Google Calendars for our marketing at Nonprofit Marketing Guide. And a couple of the things we do is we will put the initials of who is responsible in the line like this. When it's done or drafted, we'll put 1/, and when it's actually been published, we'll put 2 slashes. So that's another way that we use the calendar to help us keep up with where the content is in what stage and who's responsible for it. That's our quick tour of how to do basic editorial calendars in Excel and Google Calendars. Leave some comments below and your questions as well. Thanks. Bye-bye.